Welcome to Ideas Pod, hosted by the Observer Research Foundation and Firstpost. We are at the Raisina Dialogue 2025 in New Delhi. And I'm joined here to talk about AUKUS, the Australia, UK, US relationship. This was an agreement that was signed a few years ago to much fanfare, a security agreement which has proven quite important and somewhat controversial in some quarters. But we're here to talk a little bit about AUKUS, the future of the US-Australia relationship, and the broader implications for the Indo-Pacific. And I'm joined by two excellent guests. One is Bernard Philipp, First Assistant Secretary from Australia, and also Abe Denmark, who is formerly Senior Advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Defense dealing with AUKUS issues, now partner at the Asia Group and affiliated with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. Abe, let me start with you. Maybe walk our viewers a little bit through AUKUS. What is AUKUS, and what are some of the elements of it?
Sure. So AUKUS was an agreement signed between the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia to enhance our defense relationships. It's divided into two pillars. The first pillar is focused on helping Australia acquire a nuclear-powered submarine capability as their existing Collins-class retires. So we're going to be helping that. It's the first time the United States has shared its naval nuclear propulsion technology with another country since we shared it with the United Kingdom in the 1950s. So this is a very big deal and a major initiative for all three countries. The second pillar of AUKUS, which is, you'll be surprised to hear, is called Pillar 2, is focused on enhancing other capability areas, cooperation between those three countries on advanced capabilities like quantum, electronic warfare, artificial intelligence, and the like. And that is the area where there's discussion about adding additional countries like Japan.
AUKUS, I think, is the term.
That's, people like to add letters to various things on specific advanced capability projects within Pillar 2.
Mm-hmm. Great. Bernard, maybe talk a little bit through, it was a little bit controversial. It was sort of announced to some surprise initially. It does seem to have survived changes in government in both the UK and Australia, and then possibly also in the United States now. Maybe what changed in Australia's strategic outlook that led to AUKUS?
Well, Australia for some years has been assessing that our environment in the Indo-Pacific is becoming both higher risk and more unpredictable. So in that sense, we have been looking at what capabilities we can acquire to best meet our interests. In the case of undersea warfare, the opportunity presented by AUKUS and building on our very close partnerships with the United States and the United Kingdom, and in the case of the United States, our long-standing alliance, we have the opportunity to acquire a capability that's uniquely suited to our environment. Australia, as you know, is an island continent. We have the Pacific, Indian and Southern Oceans surrounding us. And so when it comes to naval capabilities, there's a high premium to be placed on speed and endurance. And in cooperation with our partners, we determined that this capability would give us a very significant edge as we seek to respond to our strategic circumstances.
Mm-hmm. If I can ask both of you, what was the, people understand Australia's strategic environment, the US has some of the most advanced defense technologies the United States possesses, and this is obviously a very strong relationship. What does the UK bring to the table? Terry?
Well, the United Kingdom is essential to how the United States builds, maintains, and operates our submarines. They've been a partner of the United States in this area since the 1950s, and they bring a lot of capability. They also bring ship production capacity. As I expect you're aware, and I expect we'll talk about, the United States has been facing challenges in our shipbuilding industry, and so having the United Kingdom participate in this and agree to cooperate with the Australians in constructing a new class of submarines that we're calling SSN AUKUS, I think is a critical element of AUKUS overall, and is a critical element of how the United Kingdom is contributing to Pillar 1. On Pillar 2, The United Kingdom has a lot of capabilities in advanced warfare and advanced technologies, and they bring that to the table as well.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I would echo what Abe says. I mean, the UK brings a very strong defence industrial base and a record of achievement over many decades. The Royal Australian Navy turns 125 next year, and over all of that period it has worked very closely with the Royal Navy. So in that sense, I think it's a natural evolution of the partnership between our three countries, and we have obviously conducted operations over many decades and have a record of working together very effectively to contribute to global security.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead a little bit, we've had changes in AUKUS has survived a change from the Sunak to the Starmer government. Again, it was announced, I think, under the Conservative government in Australia under Scott Morrison, I believe, and continued under Prime Minister Albanese. Now we've had a change in government in the United States from Biden to the Trump administration. Where do you see? Actually, maybe the first thing is, what's the sort of report card you could give on the progress to date on AUKUS, and where do you see it going forward? So maybe start.
So I think the U.S. has made good progress on AUKUS. It's probably a better grade in Pillar 1 than in Pillar 2.
Oh, really?
If I were to be honest. Pillar 1, I think we've been making good progress in terms of our cooperation. Our investments into the industrial base have been significant, and we're really laying the groundwork for robust cooperation. In Pillar 2, we've had some good accomplishments, especially in harmonizing our export control regimes, where we've created what is essentially an almost seamless environment for the three countries to trade defense capabilities with one another. I think that's extremely important. But where we haven't gotten in Pillar 2 is a real tangible capability that we can point to and say this is happening because of AUKUS. I know there's people who are thinking about what that could be, what kind of tangible capability we could develop, but that's something I think we're looking to happen over the coming years.
I believe there's some on UUV undersea vehicles that there has been some progress in that front, like with quantum navigation and
yeah, there's been a lot of progress in different areas, and I didn't want to discount those. But what we haven't seen is like a new missile, a new ship, a new whatever it may be that we can point to and say that's an AUKUS thing. Mostly it's happened in the software area, in the operational sphere, which are very important. But I think what we need in Pillar 2 at this point is something tangible that everybody can focus on and say this is demonstrating progress and the importance of Pillar 2.
Yeah, I would add that those projects that have delivered capability have certainly been a good demonstration of the ability of the three countries to work together closely. As Abe says, though, I think the foundation has really been set on the regulatory side and the reduction of those barriers to collaboration between the three countries, and we are working very hard to establish those projects that will make a real difference to the warfighter. On Pillar 1, this is obviously a very complex technology and a very complex national project that Australia is engaged on. Everything from making sure that our personnel are trained, which often involves serving on United States Navy or Royal Navy boats, establishing nuclear regulator, and putting in place the support and sustainment capabilities that we will need. We've already been able to support and sustain visiting US Navy SSNs, so our judgment is we are making good progress, but it is an incredibly complex enterprise.
Was that in Sydney or in Perth? Or
that was in Perth.
Yeah, okay. I want to sort of also just sort of broaden the conversation a little bit. AUKUS has been important in some ways. It sent a signal. There was surprise across the broader Indo-Pacific and a lot of parsing of what the implications might be. Maybe start, Bernard, if I could ask you first. Maybe where do you see the future of the alliance headed? The U.S.-Australia alliance. I mean, many people are aware that Australia and the United States have fought in several wars together, going back 70+ years. Where do you see that going now under a Trump administration?
Well, as you say, Dhruv, we have served on the battlefield together for over a century now. We've had a formal alliance since the end of World War II, and during that period we've operated together in many locations around the world, and in our Indo-Pacific environment have worked very closely together to shape the strategic environment through the Cold War, into the Cold War period and beyond. In terms of how we're thinking about the future of our alliance relationship, we continue to see it making a very important contribution to our security, but also we see the alliance as a real opportunity for our two countries to contribute to regional security. If you look at some of the recent developments in the alliance relationship, we've spoken about AUKUS, but there has been a growing US rotational presence in Australia through...
In Darwin?
In Darwin, in other parts of Australia through force posture initiatives. And again, that's an opportunity for our two countries to train and exercise together, and then in some cases contribute to regional security directly. We've also built out our exercise relationship, and so later this year we will hold the largest and most complex iteration of our exercise Talisman Sabre, which began as a bilateral exercise between Australia and the United States, but has now grown to have a much larger set of partners, and I think it's a good example of how the alliance can really contribute to regional security.
Abe, if one of the objectives, and feel free to contest this, was about shaping the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific, if one of the objectives of AUKUS, do you think it is accomplishing that? Is AUKUS sufficient? Does more need to be done to achieve that objective?
Yeah, I think that AUKUS was and is just a part of what the United States has been doing across the Indo-Pacific in terms of modernizing our alliances across the region, strengthening our partnerships across the region, including with India, to make sure that we maintain the ability to sustain deterrence, support our allies, defend our interests across the region. Again, in the face of what we're seeing from China and North Korea, especially more assertive, more aggressive, and more concerning capabilities and behavior from them. So I think AUKUS has helped a great deal. I saw China make a very strenuous attempt to try to undermine AUKUS in the international system after it was announced, and they failed pretty significantly, both I think because of the great diplomacy that was done, especially by our colleagues in Australia and the United Kingdom, but also because of the facts on the ground. And our allies and partners across the region know what we're doing, what AUKUS is and what AUKUS isn't, and they see what China is doing across the region, how that affects their interests. So obviously I think there's more that we need to do to continue to strengthen our relationships, to buttress our military capabilities, to modernize our economic strategy and policy across the Indo-Pacific. But I do think that we're moving in the right direction. We've been seeing the United States enhance its strategy towards the Indo-Pacific for more than a decade now. I was part of the Obama administration rebalance effort, and I think you can trace its roots to back then to the Bush administration and before that. But there's still more that we need to do. The Trump administration is very focused on enhancing our own capabilities. They're taking a more transactional approach to our relationships, but despite what some folks may have, the anxiety some folks may have about these alliances, I think they're robust, they're bigger than any one person, than any one administration, and the strategic logic that they have for the United States, for our allies, for our partners, those don't change. So I'm fairly optimistic about how they're going forward.
So I can ask you this because you're no longer in government, but is there anything any sense that you've had from the Trump administration that they are seeking to relook or renegotiate or amend any major aspect of the AUKUS relationship so far?
I haven't seen that. I've seen the Secretary of Defense, I've seen the Secretary of State, both express significant support for AUKUS. And even Elbridge Colby, who during the Biden administration was a pretty significant critic of AUKUS, in his testimony said he wants to do everything that we can to make sure this succeeds. And I thought that was very important. There is going to be a debate in the United States about our shipbuilding industry, and there's going to be a major effort by the Trump administration, I expect, to strengthen our ability to produce ships, both military and civilian. And AUKUS Pillar 1 may get caught up in that, but I have a lot of confidence that the current administration supports AUKUS Pillar 1, and they want to make sure that our ability to produce submarines, to produce other military craft is increased, and which I see as in a lot of continuity with what we were trying to do during the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm. Final two questions, both to Bernard. First, there has been a certain degree of controversy or debate about AUKUS. In Australia, it's become a domestic political issue. It's sort of seeped into popular culture in some ways. I saw a commercial for mutton or lamb or something in Australia, which made a joke about AUKUS. But what are some of the, do you think those concerns are still there in is there a consensus around it, at least in the Australian government? Are there concerns about costs that remain or anything else?
Look, as I mentioned earlier, AUKUS is a very complex and demanding national enterprise that Australia is embarked upon, but we are making very good progress across a wide set of issues. We're having to move quickly in order to meet the key milestones under AUKUS Pillar 1, but the commitment of the Australian government to doing so is very strong. As Abe has mentioned, the signals we have received from the Trump administration towards AUKUS Pillar 1 are very positive. What I would add is that we are pursuing a range of other approaches as well. In Australia's case, that means working very closely with our Pacific Island partners. We're here at Raisina, where the keynote speaker is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, our other ally. We are deepening our relationships with Japan, with India, with the Republic of Korea. We remain committed to working closely with ASEAN. So the capabilities that we are acquiring, including through AUKUS, are among a range of measures we're taking to respond to this more dangerous environment.
Last question, again, since we're in India, you alluded to it already. The first engagement of the new U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was a meeting of the Quad foreign ministers. What do you see as the future of the Quad under Trump administration? What would Australia like to prioritize, given that we're in India?
Yes, indeed. Well, look, we see the Quad as having made and continuing to make a positive contribution to regional security through the capabilities that the four members of the Quad bring. In Australia's case, I think we very much see a focus on maritime security as being an important element of the Quad. Our four defence forces are working increasingly closely in maritime security, including through our shared maritime patrol aircraft platforms. And we see a real demand across the region for countries to be able to improve their maritime domain awareness. And I think the four Quad partners, based on the capabilities they bring and their different geographies, are well placed to support the maritime security across the region.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you for your candid remarks, and hopefully we'll see further development in the U.S.-Australia relationship, and with broader implications for all the rest of us in the years ahead. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.